I know one of the common kind of emotional postures in our nation today is to look at the students and the youth culture that we have and go, oh my goodness, what in the world's going to happen? Well, I know this. If we're going to have a spiritual awakening, it's proven time and again, whether it's the Haystack revivals, Azusa Street revivals, whatever we've seen happen in our nation, we have seen that it's come through the hearts of students, men and women, young men and women who are in fuego, on fire for Jesus Christ. And I am absolutely convinced that we must not give up on our next generation. With me in studio is a man that believes the very same thing, and his name's Dave Rutledge. He's the director of Gateway Military Academy. It's part of the West Florida Teen Challenge, and it's an amazing tool that God is using in our nation today to bring hope and healing to hundreds, maybe thousands of particularly young men who are watching them get turned on to Jesus Christ and turn off from the lies of Satan himself. Dave Rutledge is in studio with me. Good to have you with me today, Dave.
Hey, thank you. Enjoy your show.
Yeah, it's a joy to have you with. And let's just, before we get into Teen Challenge, I think at the outset here, we've got a lot of listeners right now that feel like, oh, what am I going to do? How are my kids, my students, going to overcome this cascading wave after wave of cultural funk, really weird inputs? I mean, I was looking at something, breaking news on Drudge, that at the BET Awards, 2 rappers got into it. This is a big network. It's an African-American network. They have these awards every year. And these 2 rappers got into the point where there's gunfire going off out in the parking lot, for crying out loud. Our students are being raised by a pop culture generation that's taken them away from Jesus. You're going the other way, but you have hope, don't you?
Yes, we do. You know, and when you look at the culture, 67% of young men in America being raised by single-parent moms, and there's a loss of understanding of masculinity in America, and especially to be a Christian in this culture. It is really anti-family. And but at the same time, it seems like the Holy Spirit's taking the mask off the devil, as you referred to the BET. It's like, there it is. That's who they are. You know, I mean, it's more than image. It's much deeper. There is a destroyer. There is an adversary. There is a devil behind the shadows and pulling the strings of all these situations. And so Christ came to say to destroy the works of the devil.
Yeah, and he's doing it. It's so good. Well, Dave, you're the director of Gateway Military Academy, and a lot of people listen to that title and they're like, yeah. What in the world? We got a militia going? Explain what that is.
Well, it's truly hard to consider the possibility that you're going to be military and Christian at the same time. That's an unusual concept for only people who read the New Testament. That's the only ones that see it that way. People who read the Old Testament are like, yeah, there was an army in the Old Testament. Yeah, there was military campaigns. There were enemies. And, of course, while we're not about enemies of the Old Testament, there are enemies of our soul. And so students that come off the streets, we take students against their will, and which at great risk. Because, you know, students at 16 years old, who wants to leave the party and get their life straightened out when drugs is talking to them and pothead logic is telling them, here's how you live life. You know?
And, well, you say you take them against their will, but, I mean, obviously with the will of the parents.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Parents work with us and they call us. I get about 10 phone calls a day to go with, I don't know what to do, you know. The police can't help me because he hadn't broken the law. The school can't help me because they said he doesn't do it here. But he never home at night. He won't tell us where he's going. And, you know, his life is out of control. And we think there's drugs present. And it just seems like he's always irritable, always moody, and failing in school or has quit school. We get 10 calls like that a day. Can you please help me with my son?
And you say, absolutely. Bring it on.
Oh, you know, and of course, saying yes to every situation. And, you know, some parents are not quite ready. You know, like people say, well, you know, sometimes it's hard to raise money. I mean, if you see a couple of girls walking down the street, everybody goes, oh, somebody needs to take care of those girls. But, you know, you see a couple of guys walking down the street, you know, with piercings and pants bagging, and it's like you don't have those same compassionate feelings, you know. And so getting sometimes people to see the concern or give or see the possibility that Christ could change a young man like that. And, of course, we put limits on God when we do that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we got to live an example that Christ can change it. And so coming up, we're going to get into the mechanics of how these teens are changed, how God transforms them. What are some of the key components? And then have we got a treat for you? Brennan Kurtz, a young man, 16 years old. The only problem is he calls me sir, so it makes me feel old. But hang on, 180 with Carl Clausen, your life a new direction, and we got evidence to prove it. We're back, 180 with Carl Clausen, your life, a new direction. You know, sometimes one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is to sit down, sit back, and listen to a story of life change. Want to hear it from a 16-year-old? It's coming up. Hang on. First, I want to go back to Dave Rutledge. He's the director of Gateway